Tuesday, May 22, the U.S. Supreme Court has effectively eliminated the idea that a defendant can use ineffective assistance of counsel in appeals to try and get a conviction overturned. Also this morning, superstar actress Viola Davis says a film director repeatedly referred to her by his maid's name. What? And the guy who attacked Dave Chappelle on stage at the Hollywood Bowl is speaking out, saying he was triggered when he ran on stage and attacked the comedian. We discuss all of that and more this morning with Cheryl Smith, the publisher of Texas Metro News and iMessenger Media. And we also expect to be joined by NMPA journalist Barrington Salmon. Good morning, Cheryl Smith. Well, I thought we had Cheryl Smith with us as well. Oh, there she is.
Yes, good morning.
It's always good to see you. We also expected to have Barrington Salmon join us as well, but we'll get right into it, Cheryl. Although Justice Sonia Sotomayor called the decision perverse and illogical, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled on Monday that state prisoners may not present new evidence in federal court to support claims that their counsel was ineffective in violation of the Constitution. Justice Sotomayor said, quote, "This decision is perverse. It is illogical." She wrote that in a scathing dissenting opinion. The High Court's ruling severely diminishes opportunities for inmates to claim ineffective assistance of counsel, even if the attorney failed to represent their best interests or failed to represent them properly. And just one more quote from the Justice Cheryl. She says, "It makes no sense to excuse a habeas petitioner's counsel's failure to raise a claim altogether because of ineffective assistance in post-conviction proceedings, as the case of Martinez and Trevino out in Arizona did, but to fault the same petitioner for that post-conviction counsel's failure to develop evidence in support of the trial ineffectiveness claim." Of course, Justice Clarence Thomas wrote the majority opinion in the 6-3 vote. So this is really, when you think about it, this is pretty serious. They're taking away this ineffective assistance of counsel defense on appeals. Your thoughts, especially in a state like Texas?
Well, let's first consider who this will impact. Who cannot afford to hire high-dollar legal teams? This falls right back into when you look at what is happening when you talk about the millions who are behind bars because they can't make bail. And where murderers, folks who are on trial for murder can get out because they have the money. And now here we're talking about legal representation. Come on, Stacey, how many times have we heard about lawyers' ineffective counsel?
Yeah, absolutely.
But you don't hear about ineffective counsel when you're talking about the rich and influential. Mm-hmm. You don't hear about that because they're able to hire folks. But then, and this is not to disparage, the public defenders, because a lot of them go on to be really good attorneys, and a lot of them are good attorneys even there, but some of them are in that position because they want to serve.
Yeah.
And some of them, there are a myriad of reasons why they're there, but this will negatively impact. This won't impact Clarence Thomas's friends and circles that he's in at all.
No, not at all. And Celeste Hart writes in that she just shared this article on Facebook. "As I fight for 6 guys wrongfully convicted, this puts us back," Celeste says. "This gives permission for lawyers and prosecutors to perform more misconduct." She says, "I am very upset." And David Youngblood says, "It's mostly about the perception of who commits crime, the blacks, and the value of that human life." And I guess it goes along with what you were saying, Cheryl. It goes to this perception, this court. Look, we've been talking for weeks now about the Roe v. Wade. Now we're talking about this taking away a key defense in an appeal, right? Ineffective assistance of counsel. And again, Roe v. Wade, who do they anticipate that hurting most, right? People of color, Who do they anticipate this hurting most? People of color. This Supreme Court has made its statement, hasn't it?
Definitely. And look at the Bar Association. When you think about the number of attorneys they go to, I was looking at some of the numbers of the amount that are facing charges of misconduct. And you don't hear about them as much. We need to do a better job of calling them out as well. But wrongful convictions in Texas, we have so many, over 30 men and women have gotten off because of misconduct, ineffective counsel, and then out and out lying and deceptiveness. And so here we're talking about, again, the folks who give up their life savings, if they have any, and get counsel that is just not good. Then you say, I could have done this myself. That's why you have more and more defendants who are saying, I'll go pro se, I'll defend myself. And I know they say that's a bad thing to do, but if you're going to put your life in the hands of someone who is incompetent, and then we have the Supreme Court upholding this speaks to what today is in Dallas, Texas. We're having a runoff election today. It speaks to the need to vote.
And
because the court will look entirely different if more folks had gotten out and voted.
Yeah, David Youngblood says Clarence Thomas has fallen victim to the white man's ice being colder. And we want to say good morning to Maria Jones, who says, I love this show. We love the fact that you love the show, Maria. Thanks so much. Welcome to Barrington Salmon, NMPA journalist, and of course, the president and CEO, Dr. Benjamin F. Chavis Jr. Dr. Chavis just back from Buffalo, or I don't know if you're still in Buffalo, but I know you just did the funeral yesterday. Welcome.
Good morning.
Thank you. Good morning.
And so we continue this conversation. One of the things that Clarence Thomas claimed in this is that it basically jams the court up when you have defendants claiming. This is one of the things he wrote, Cheryl. It jams the court up when you have so many defendants claiming ineffective assistance of counsel at the state court level during appeals. I mean, that makes absolutely no sense.
If you have so many claims, something is going on. Something is going on. And I'm looking at Dr. Chavis because I was reading up all this stuff on him, and this man, we just have a legend in our midst. And I don't know if people even realize this. And it's someone who has fought, what ineffective counsel looks like, and what deceptive or overzealous prosecutors look like. And we also can say that we see what happens when they're lax, because right now we're dealing with, across this country, a number of district attorneys who could come up with 20 charges on Sandra Bland, but can't come up with 2 or 3 on shooters, especially if they're shooting people of color.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or police officers who are assaulting young Black women, especially.
Absolutely. Well, Clarence Thomas is, we shouldn't be shocked from his first day on the Supreme Court until now. And now he's the oldest member on the Supreme Court. His tenure has been anti-civil rights, anti-rights for African Americans and other people of color, anti-women's rights. He is a embarrassment. I could use a stronger term. And I think that I remember when he was first nominated, there were even some of my colleagues, Cheryl, in the civil rights movement who said, well, yeah, the brother is conservative, but look, once he gets there, he's going to change. Trust me, he'll change. But, I think there's an old adage, and it really comes from African proverb. Once someone shows you who they are, that's who they are. And Clarence Thomas, in my view, has been consistent. So Stacey, his latest comments, his latest expressions of judicial complaint is the system itself is wrought with inequity, is wrought with institutionalized white supremacy and racism, is wrought with prosecutorial misconduct as well as judicial misconduct. Because keep in mind, in order for a prosecutor to misbehave during a trial, the judge has to allow it.
Yeah.
So it is not only prosecutorial misconduct, it's judicial misconduct. And it's interesting that, Clarence Thomas went to the Supreme Court not being a judge at all anywhere.
Yeah,
You have to look at his background. What was his background?
EEOC chairman or something.
Right. So he wasn't a Thurgood Marshall. He wasn't a judge, Brown Jackson. He doesn't have that kind of experience or pedigree, and unfortunately, he has been a systematic turncoat when it comes to even articulating any kind of defense for the rights of our people and our long struggle for freedom, justice, and equality. And even when he was at the EEOC, his rulings were always to protect the victimizers of people's rights, not necessarily to protect the rights of workers.
Well, why isn't there a larger outcry about what his wife is doing or what she has done?
Yeah, we covered that yesterday. We've been covering that, Cheryl. You're absolutely right. What she's done is it, and some people have said it amounts to treason. Barrington, I know that you can think of stronger words to say about Clarence Thomas, but let's go to Barrington for one moment.
No, Doc is 100% right. One of the things I remember him saying when he was appointed was that he was going to in other words, punish liberals by living as long as he can to support the types of policies that so-called liberals and progressives and really decent people support. No surprise here. I think a lot of what I see is just a reminder of how flawed so many institutions in this country are. We have been taught that institutions like the Supreme Court and other places were almost infallible, that impregnable, that the types of erosion that we're seeing couldn't happen. The thing that I've said from the beginning is that everybody who has been known to be a traitor, to be an insurrectionist, should be put behind bars. But Thomas, there's no ethics law that requires that Thomas recuse himself or be removed from certain cases. And so they know that they have that luxury, and it's going to continue.
Yeah. Well, as we move on, Viola Davis has won an Oscar award. She's won an Emmy Award. She's won a Golden Globe Award. But, we've been talking a lot about racism and how racists think. She's a veteran of both film and TV and has been working steadily since the mid-1990s. But that doesn't mean she's immune from the issues many Black actors face in Hollywood. Viola Davis said in a recent interview that her director called her by his maid's name. She says, I actually had a director who did that to me. He called her Louise. And she says, I had known him for 10 years and he called me Louise. And I found out that it's because his maid's name is Louise. Where do we even begin with this, Cheryl?
Well, you begin, folks want to say microaggression, and it's just plain racist. That's all. You talk about microaggression, and I at first I chuckled because it brought me back to my dad, because my dad would never call my boyfriends by their real name. He just could never get it right, and I know he was just punking the guys. But we hear time and time again. My stomach. I wake up every day feeling for us, but especially for Black women, because people just feel like they can treat us any kind of way. And we need more people like the Senator Cory Booker's to come to our aid when we are being mistreated, because we can't do all the speaking for ourselves. The person should have been called out. I don't care who he is, where he is, and what he is doing. And on the flip side, we have to do a better job of supporting one another so that we don't feel like we have to suffer in silence for decades.
Yeah, she noted too, Dr. Chavis, that she says as a dark-skinned Black woman, she's a rarity in front leaning roles on a series. She says, I know that when I left How to Get Away with Murder, I don't see a lot of dark-skinned women in lead roles on TV, not even in streaming services. That goes into ideology and ethos and mentality, and that's speaking in the abstract. Why aren't you hiring a dark-skinned woman when she walks in the room and you say she blows you away? Then create space and storytelling for her, so when she thrives, she's not thriving despite of her circumstances. She's thriving because of the circumstances. Doc, great point she raises, right?
Well, again, America has a problem with skin color. America has a problem with ethnicity. America has a problem with religion. America has a problem with sociology. At the base, America has a problem with the truth. You know, and let's just call it for what it is. And I think for over 200 years, we built these mythologies. Keep in mind, even the term racism is not an extreme ancient term. You know, when the transatlantic slave trade first started 500 years ago, they had to come up with propositions to justify European expansion, European domination of the world. And they had to say that the rest of the world was less than in order to justify the genocide of Native Americans, the genocide of people of African descent. You know, and if you look at even what happened in some of these battles in Europe, they committed genocide on one another. You know, so I think that, and the reason why I bring all this up about skin color, because in the mythology of what is good and what is bad, there's an association of the color white with that is good, and there's still an association of the color black of that what is bad. You know, well, you know, when Wall Street crashes, it's a Black Monday, it's a Black Tuesday. You know, you know, it's interesting that, and some of us, you know, we use the terms also too lightly. I'm talking about because we have also been socialized, and this is what Viola is saying. Keep in mind, it's just not what that director said to her, but what the director said to her is a tip of a larger iceberg. You know, the sentiment of America. We've come away. We made progress, but we still have a long ways to go. And that is why I'm even hearing now at the White House, the new press secretary is a dark-skinned sister, and you'd be surprised the whispering and the comments that have been made, even by the press corps. You know, so I think that, you know, we but this is the importance of the Black press. We have to defy colorism. We have to defy racism. We have to defy anything that lowers our own estimation of who we are in the world, not just in America. And I think that we have to raise up our young people to be able to not become infected with the virus of racism or the virus of colorism, because it is an infectious disease.
Yeah, and Barrington, I know your wife is basically in the film business, and so what kind of discussions perhaps you guys have had regarding racism in that industry? You're on mute, Barrington.
Things that we talk about this all the time. I remember I got a job at the Washington Times in '96, I think, and I was the only Black reporter on the Metro desk. I think they had like 18 people. When I went to the editor and asked him why in then a 72% black city was there only one black reporter on the Metro desk. He said they couldn't find qualified people. And, that's the type of game that they play. Doc knows they have these American Society of Newspaper Editor polls and surveys every year. And they've been making these promises since the 1970s that they're going to increase the numbers of black editors and writers. And it hasn't happened. And they keep on making promises and nothing happens. The only time that they start moving is when you have a situation like with George Floyd, where massive protests all around the country, all around the world. And when the editors look in their newsrooms, they don't have folks that can go out there and talk to people that look like us, talk to Latinos, talk to other people from other places. And then they, because there was a big push. Yeah, there's a big push after that for them to recruit people. But it's disingenuous. 80% of most American newsrooms are headed by white men. We have just got to, in my mind, we do one of two things. We do what we've done with NNPA and create our own spaces that we can push our narrative, push our stories, and hire those of us who we know are qualified, but who probably aren't gonna get a job in mainstream media.
You were so right. And Stacey, about 15 years ago, I interviewed Samuel L. Jackson, and I asked him about even the women who play alongside him. And when he rarely has a love interest, and when he does, he says, listen, Halle Berry is almost like 20 years younger than I am. Mm-hmm. And you look at the women, and whereas a Viola Davis is in the same age group, women who are in that age group don't get to play being sexy, but white women in that age group can be sexy and attractive and have love interests. So we're dealing with it across the board, how we are treated. And when you talk about the newsrooms across America, they'll let us have a chance at it in the so-called mainstream when they're crashing and burning, when their numbers are so low, when people aren't reading them like they used to. Then they want to bring us in. And we continue to have an issue, and we continue to hear we can't find when we know we're out there.
Oh, absolutely. And as we move on this morning, the man who charged Dave Chappelle on stage at the Hollywood Bowl in Los Angeles earlier this month said he attacked the comedian because he found the show's content triggering. He says, I identify as bisexual, and I wanted him to know what he said was triggering. The man, Isaiah Lee, said it in an interview that he implored Dave Chappelle to be more sensitive. He added that I wanted him to know that next time he should consider first running his material by people it could affect. Dave Chappelle and Friends show, which was part of the Netflix Is a Joke Festival, took a turn when Chappelle started talking about controversies stemming from jokes he's made about transgender people and when he joked about homelessness. Lee said he's a single dad and has experienced homelessness. It's a struggle, he said, and I wanted Dave Chappelle to know it's not a joke. He said, but it wasn't Chappelle who ultimately set him off. He said another comedian in the show made a joke about pedophilia and having been molested. He was triggered. The LAPD said Lee jumped on stage and attacked Chappelle just as he was about to leave. Security guards and people in plain clothes intervened and pulled Lee off the comedian before detaining him. This attacking comedians on stage, this young man said he was triggered, but there's another way to do this. I mean, we can't all follow the Will Smith way of handling comedians on stage. Cheryl, I'll start with you on that.
It's hilarious the triggering that is going on because visions passed by. I thought about the late Bernie Mac. I thought about the late Dick Gregory. I'm just thinking of what would be happening with some of them were they alive today, and what they address, because it is, I do realize folks are comedians and and some are just letting loose with whatever they want to say. I'm curious as to why the young man was there, because he should have clearly known the work of the folks he was going to see. And looking at him, and looks are deceiving, so someone's correct me, but this boy don't look like he knows anything about triggering. Someone put that defense in his head.
Well, I tell you what, you made a point there about knowing the material, and you made a point about comedians so-called triggering folks. Comedians today, Doc, in Barrington, they do seem to be more talking about other folks. I recall perhaps the greatest stand-up in history when, after Richard Pryor had that horrendous accident in which he drugs, crack pipe blew up and he caught on fire, he gave a stirring performance about himself that made everybody laugh, talking about himself. Perhaps people like Richard Pryor, well, Richard Pryor is gone, but we have other comedians like Sinbad, and we hope Sinbad is still recovering from his stroke from over a year ago, but they make fun of themselves at times. Where has that gone, Barrington and Dr. Chavis?
Well, I was going to let Barrington go first, but let me just say that comedy is a nuanced profession. And I think people who, and quite frankly, comedy is a subset of culture. And I think there is a place for comedy in human life. Let's not make this a racial thing. Let's just talk about humanity, just like music. And the thing is, I think that there's no room for violence. And I agree with Cheryl, this quote unquote trigger terminology is something that people use as an excuse to justify the wrongness that they've done. The mad, evil white supremacists that killed 10 of our people in Buffalo, yeah, he had a trigger, but that doesn't justify pulling a trigger. That doesn't justify getting a knife or a gun or even putting your fists on somebody because you don't like what they said or you don't like the nuance of their joke. I think that, and a lot of these assailants, quote unquote, are getting younger and younger. And you look at some of the violence that goes on in our own communities, a lot of it is it's between brothers and sisters. It's between us. It's not the external attack. So the trauma that we face as Black Americans, that's what I'm concerned about, is multiple. It comes from all angles. It comes from external, but it also comes from internal. And again, I have to keep saying that's why we have the Black press. We have to navigate through all of this and create a narrative that's uplifting. It's truthful, but also uplifting. I always like to speak the truth, even when I spoke at Sister's funeral, Catherine Massey's funeral yesterday. It was my job first to uplift the family and to uplift her legacy and not to focus so much on the evil and the madness that caused her brutal death. I referenced it, but it was my responsibility on behalf of the Black press to let her know that we're going to pick up Catherine Massey's pen, and we're going to continue to be the kind of journalists, be the kind of publishers that speaks truth to power, writes truth to power, publishes truth to power. And that's what we've been doing for 195 years. So all these issues, Stacey, and that's why Let It Be Known is so important every morning. We cover a wide range of issues, but at the end of the day, we cover the issues in a way that not only gives our people the truth, but also gives our people an understanding of why things the way they are and what we should be doing to make sure that we can change this reality and make sure that the proper narrative is out there, not only in the Black press, but also the white press. I challenge the mainstream press all the time with their inaccuracies, with their stereotypes, and with their allowing people to get away with terms like trigger, Cheryl, that we know don't really apply to these situations.
Yeah, and you can read about that in the Black Press. Dr. Chavis's speech at the funeral, his talk at the funeral yesterday. Barrington, I want to give you a chance to weigh in on this young man, Isaiah Lee, who attacked Dave Chappelle. Barrington, I think you're on mute. Okay, we don't have Barrington. He doesn't have
maybe have a little technical difficulty.
Yes. Well, we're going to continue to follow these things and more. Obviously, it's either all the way around. It's intolerable. Violence is just not something that we should be pushing in any way, shape, or form. Don't forget our NNPA's annual convention is coming up. The Black Press of America is celebrating 195 years. The conference kicks off in New Orleans on June 22nd. And that week, on that Friday, an extremely special performance and appearance by the one and only Stephanie Mills. Go to nnpa-events.com. You can actually purchase tickets to the Legacy Awards in which she's going to perform, but you can also look at other things that will be going on at that conference in New Orleans, and you can also purchase tickets to the Messenger Awards and all the other events that are going on. But Stephanie Mills is certainly the highlight by far. I mean, she's the superstar who has the greatest voice in music today. So join us next month in New Orleans at our summer conference. Thanks for joining Let It Be Known, and we will see you tomorrow.